The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Straight ahead on this edition of Perspectives, we go front and center with the issue of HIV and AIDS. We'll discuss the governor's plan to reduce HIV and AIDS here in New York State, as well as a new measure that's being used in the fight. That's straight ahead with yours truly, Darren Hyman.
What's on your mind?
Let 'em know.
What's on your mind? What's on your mind?
Let 'em know. Anything relevant to life, you bring it to the table. Whether you make a move solo or a movement with a stable. No fables, you speak on your decisions. Cause in the long run, it's your voice, your views, your vision. Keeping it real with many messages for you to know. This ain't radio, but DJ runs the show. Entertainment, he rocks it. Politics, he locks it. The host with the most would handle any topic. Don't forget to share your perspective with shines of light. Cause it might make a difference in someone else's life.
Make a difference.
What's your perspective?
Express what's in your heart and your mind. Share your perspective.
What's your perspective? Let 'em know.
And hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Perspectives. I am Darren Hyman. Of course, we thank you for watching and staying connected to us. Now, in order to stay connected to us, we invite you to stay with us on the show via social media. Hit us up on Facebook or Twitter. There you'll be able to find out what's happening and also get an opportunity to comment on what you'd like to see on Perspectives. Coming front and center on this edition of Perspectives, we go and talk about the issue of HIV and AIDS. It's an epidemic that's actually affecting the nation. The Centers for Disease Control has released new numbers, and here in New York State, an aggressive effort to end and reduce the number of new infections. Our guest in studio is someone who's very familiar with dealing with just that. Her name is Nikki Jennings, and she is an education specialist at SUNY Upstate Medical University. And we thank you so much for coming and being here with us on Perspectives.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. And as we talk about this here, obviously HIV, AIDS, let's talk first a little bit about statistics. I mean,
Yeah.
the numbers. Are we seeing a rise or are we seeing a decrease?
Neither. We're seeing a steady state of new infections. So in this country, we're seeing around 50,000 new HIV infections every year. In New York State, around 3,500. And that's remained fairly steady now for a while. So there's not been an increase, but we've not yet seen a decrease either.
So we're about the same.
Yeah.
And so obviously Governor Cuomo very aggressive in talking about he wants to deal with HIV and AIDS, releasing this plan. And so let's talk a little bit about the governor's plan.
Yeah.
What exactly is it?
So what's been put together is a blueprint, a plan to end AIDS by 2020. And that's what, as a state, we're working on. This was we're the first state to put together such an ambitious goal. The goal being to reduce new HIV infections down from that number 3,500 down to 750 per year. So we want to break, that's a significant drop in new HIV infections in New York State if we can do it.
And it's a very ambitious goal.
It is.
And reaching out to really give awareness and get people involved. How successful are we? Because, you know, sometimes people are not so receptive, I should say, we'll talk about HIV and AIDS.
Yeah, so like I said, the goal is to bring that number down by 2020, and there's a lot of efforts going on throughout the state, both in the city and upstate New York, you know, Buffalo, Syracuse, Rochester, Albany, you know, all over the state we're working to bring that number down. HIV is difficult because there's a lot of stigma that goes with HIV. A lot of people are not comfortable talking about HIV, and when we don't talk about it, the problem doesn't go away.
Upstate, downstate. Obviously, you're from SUNY Upstate.
Yeah.
Talk to us about upstate, downstate. Are there a lot of differences?
There are a lot of differences. The major cities that we've got, upstate New York, Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, Albany, have not seen a decrease in HIV infections. Actually, here in New York City, there has been a bit of a decline in new HIV infections, which is great. And the efforts here have been very, very successful. And some of those programs we're trying very hard to implement in upstate New York, but very different areas. And so, you know, with very different communities, we have to tailor our efforts to suit that.
And when we talk about tailored efforts, there's a major push to tailor those efforts to really deal particularly in the inner cities, because we're seeing new rates of infection, predominantly African American community. Where are we also seeing rises?
So we particularly see new infections in young people, 13 to 24-year-olds. That's an age group that we tend to see a large number of new HIV infections. Like you say, African Americans are disproportionately affected by HIV, making up 44% of new HIV infections. Throughout this epidemic, gay men or men who have sex with men have always been disproportionately affected as well. Historically, injection drug users have been affected more by the epidemic. The new HIV infections in injection drug users has dropped significantly over the last 10 years. But certainly that's still a population we're looking to reach out to and to help make sure that, that there isn't a rise and that we keep that number on the decline.
World AIDS Day is around the corner, of
That's
course,
right.
and obviously a lot of people will be paying particular attention to HIV and AIDS on World AIDS Day. But aside from that, give me your perspective. Are people becoming more receptive by way of awareness to what's going on and the things that are happening with HIV and AIDS and the treatments that are out there and that whole awareness platform?
I hope so. I think it varies a lot. I consistently see, I spend a lot of time working with young people and do a lot of outreach, talking to youth groups, going to schools. And I have to say, knowledge on HIV is not good in young people. The fear of HIV is not there. And while we've made significant developments in treatment, HIV is now classified as a chronic illness. It's certainly not a death sentence. Somebody with HIV now will live a long and healthy life. But that's not to say that it should be disregarded. There's still a lot of challenges that come with being HIV positive. So we do want people to recognize that this is something to really try and avoid. You don't want to be HIV positive if you can possibly avoid it. And we have such good tools to prevent that now.
When you talk about your conversations with young people, obviously they're very receptive in some ways and they have a lot of things to say.
Yeah.
What's your conversation like, and walk us inside of that and how they're receiving?
So what we always try and do is start at the beginning, because anytime we assume there's knowledge, we're usually wrong. So try and start from the beginning and just make sure that they have good basic information on HIV, like how is HIV transmitted, what body fluids contain HIV, and what they can do to prevent HIV. So that's the kind of information that we're trying to give. What we're hearing back is very mixed knowledge on HIV, and I think that varies dependent on what school they're in, maybe what school district, but also the conversations they're having at home, where some young people have talked about sex and talked about HIV in the home and are comfortable and have pretty good information, versus those where it's just not discussed. And usually those are the young people that have maybe got the information from the streets, from the internet, and often that's when it's really patchy, and in some cases flat out wrong. They have terrible information. So we've got the whole range there.
Well, speaking of information, we're going to give you some more information coming up after the break. We're going to go talking about PrEP. It's a new thing that's out there. We're going to explain exactly what PrEP is. You'll get more information. We're going to give you the information right here on Perspective. Stay with us. We'll be back with Nikki in just a few moments.
Every Monday night at 9, we talk to the borough's movers and shakers about the latest in Bronx politics, education, healthcare, arts and culture, and literally any and everything that's important to the people of the Bronx. There's a reason why Bronxites have been turning to Bronx Talk for more than 20 years, because Bronx Talk is about you and me, the people of the Bronx. So we'll see you Monday night at 9.
Wow, these are really good.
You act surprised. Practice makes perfect.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who don't need perfection. They need you.
Hey, look, it's those guys.
Let's do those pearly whites, man. Yeah. The boys, check it out. Ooh, cute.
Are you good to drive?
I'm fine.
Hey girl, what's up? What's the name? What's good? What's up?
How many did you have?
I should be fine.
You should be.
Sir, go and step out of the vehicle for me.
Yes, sir. See ya, buddy. Today, Sean's got a hearing. We'll see how it goes. Good luck. So turns out, buzz driving and drunk driving, they're the same thing, and it costs around $10,000. So not worth it.
And we're back here on Perspectives. Darren Jaime here with us. Our guest in studio, Nikki Jennings. She's an education specialist at SUNY Upstate Medical University, talking about HIV and AIDS. And we were discussing just a little bit at the top of the show about the governor's plan to really deal with HIV and AIDS, taking it on front and center. And one of the things I know that's talked about a lot is the measures, and the measures dealing with specifically testing. And I know that testing is a big part of what you do, and then also at the same time what the governor would like to see.
Yeah. So the governor's plan to end AIDS by 2020 is a 3-point plan. There's 3 parts to this. The first is testing. So we really want people to get tested. We recommend that everyone gets an HIV test once a year at a minimum. And if somebody knows there's some risk in their life for HIV, every 6 months is ideal. People have got to get tested. We know that there are a lot of people out there who are HIV positive and don't know it. And that's not good for them because they're getting sick, whether they have symptoms or not. The virus is damaging their immune system, but also because they don't know they have it, they're more likely to pass it on to somebody else. So we want people to get tested. Then they know they're HIV positive. We can get them into treatment, and make sure that they do very well, live a long and healthy life. And that's the first part to the plan is testing, getting people tested. The next part to the plan is trying to get the people who are HIV positive into care. So we have a whole range of people in kind of different places with their HIV status. So we have around 130,000 people in New York State who are HIV positive. And not all of those people are in care. So we have the people who don't know they're HIV positive, and they're the ones hopefully that we can pick up through testing and get them into care. But we also have people who are HIV positive. They know they're HIV positive, but for a variety of different reasons are not in care, which means they're not taking their medication. Typically with someone who's HIV positive, we would see them around just once every 3 months. They would come in, have blood work done. We would check, see how they're doing, make sure the medications are working for them, and send them on their way. Being in care is not a big ordeal. It's far from it. But we need people to be in care, because when somebody's in care and taking their medication, the chance of them passing the virus along is very, very small. One of the things we talk about is somebody having an undetectable viral load.
Right.
And that's really what we're aiming for with somebody who's HIV positive. So if somebody's on treatment, the treatment's working well for them, we can get to a point where the virus is almost undetectable in their blood. And what that means from a prevention perspective is that even if they were, say, to have unprotected sex with someone who is HIV negative or maybe share needles, the chance of them passing the virus along is slim to none. So that's a big deal as far as prevention goes. And obviously we want those people to be healthy as well and do very well. The third part of the plan is PrEP. And that's the bit that I really spend a lot of my time working on, trying to educate people on PrEP, trying to find people who are at risk for HIV, get them onto PrEP, which is our daily prevention pill, get them onto PrEP, keep them on PrEP, and keep them HIV negative.
Give me a little bit more on PrEP, because we're hearing that. The word is out a lot more, but there's still a little bit of a misunderstanding and lack of clarity. So give us some clarity on that.
So PrEP stands for pre-exposure prophylaxis. It's a daily pill that somebody would take, 1 pill once a day, and while they're taking the medication, it's over 99% effective at preventing HIV. So this is actually a medication that's been used for well over 10 years to treat people who are HIV positive. So it's an antiretroviral. This medication, many people who are HIV positive will take this medication along with something else. They won't take it alone, but somebody who's HIV positive will take this along with another medication for treatment. Now, what we're talking about for PrEP is prevention. So this is for people who are HIV negative but at risk for HIV. They take this daily pill. The medication is called Truvada. Take the pill every day, and while they're taking it, they have that really high level of protection against HIV. So if they did come across the virus, maybe they did have unprotected sex with someone who's HIV positive, maybe they shared needles, whatever that might be, this medication is going to keep them safe and stop the virus from replicating once it gets into the body.
How's it being received by the public?
Very mixed reception, I think. I think to a certain degree there's a little bit of skepticism, a little bit maybe of mistrust. And I think some people are still of the mindset that we should just use condoms. And condoms are over 99% effective. The problem there is that that's the message that's been going out since pretty much the beginning of the epidemic. And if we had done that and if people were consistently using condoms, then this epidemic would be on the way out. You know, we would already be a long way to ending the HIV epidemic, and that's just not happening. And there's a variety of reasons why condoms are not being used. So we need to look at other prevention tools. You know, we can't just keep saying use protection, because it's not getting through. So we need to use these new prevention tools like PrEP. But there's still, like I say, there's still some skepticism. People are still not quite sure, why not just use a condom? I hear that a lot.
Right.
But in some cases, it's not quite that simple. Some people don't have control over that. Maybe they don't have the confidence to be able to negotiate condom use. It's not always as simple as just, it sounds simple, just use a condom, but it's not. And this is a different approach. This is taking it allows someone to take control themselves, where maybe in that situation, they don't have the ability to negotiate condom use, but they can have the ability to take a pill once a day. So it really is a wonderful tool to prevent HIV, but we just need to get the message out into the community that this is effective, it's safe, it's covered by insurance. It's something that's readily available to help keep people HIV negative.
And the message is getting out, though.
It is. I think one of the problems that we have with PrEP is that we know this works. It's very effective. But we need people to recognize they're at risk for HIV. And I think that's sometimes where this falls down, because somebody needs to see that they're at risk for HIV and then go and get PrEP. And I think all too often people don't think they're at risk for HIV. It's too easy to put this off onto somebody else. For example, gay men have always been disproportionately affected by HIV. And so what I hear a lot, particularly from heterosexual men and women, is this is a problem that affects gay men. I'm not gay, so I don't need this. And that's just not true. We've seen an increase in heterosexual men and women getting HIV. This is not a disease that just affects gay men. So
and seniors,
absolutely, and we do see certainly new infections in that 50+ age group, and I think one of the reasons there is that, again, condoms are not being used, that maybe they're not needed for birth control, so they're not used. So this disease, HIV, truly affects everybody, but too often I think people are quick to say, this isn't me, this doesn't affect me, I'm not one of those sorts of people, and it's just not an accurate way to look at this disease. And that's where the stigma comes in. We want to be quick to brush it off onto somebody else, and we need to take away the stigma with HIV, accept that it's there, accept that it's in our communities, and work in a positive way to try and end the epidemic.
Nikki Jennings, our guest here on Perspective. Stay with us, because coming up after the break, we're going to discuss a few more things that you need to know as we're raising awareness and bringing you the information on HIV and AIDS. And if you have some questions, of course, we invite you to email us here at the show or hit us up on Facebook or Twitter. And guess what? We'll be able to get those questions answered for you. Taking a quick break, coming right back right after this.
It's not always easy being a dad.
Do you have panda asthma too? Does that run in the family? This is the home of the most priceless kung fu artifacts.
But when you make an effort,
Dad, we're not supposed to touch anything. Oh, sorry. Go along, son.
It's always worth it.
Whoa, master!
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today.
I am gonna get you. I'm gonna get you.
Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov to learn more.
Did you know kids who play outdoors have healthier lungs?
Totally.
I did. Did you know that boys that play with dolls make better husbands?
My son has lots of dolls. But did you know terry cloth diapers breathe better?
I did.
It's totally true.
Oh, yeah.
Did you know that strollers have the right of way on the sidewalk?
Yes.
Yep, I did. Did you guys
Did you know that kids who eat breakfast have higher GPAs?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. That's actually what I was going to say.
Did you know babies should never touch silver? It's really bad for them.
I knew that.
Did you guys know that statistically friendly kids have more friends?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's obvious.
Did you know most people think they're using the right car seat for their kid, but they're not?
Parents who really know it all know for sure that their child is in the right seat at the right age and size. Visit safercar.gov/the right seat to make sure your child is protected.
I'm putting that on my blog.
I just put it in mine.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes? B, console her?
Don't worry, sweetie. This is gonna happen a lot.
Or C, find her a new boyfriend?
Nice, single boys. That was weird.
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
Background Perspectives, Darren Hiv here with you. Our topic, I should say, of conversation, HIV and AIDS. Nikki Jennings, our guest in the studio, giving us a little bit of information. And in the last segment, we talked a little bit about PrEP and giving you information that you need to know. And I want to talk a little bit more about the misconceptions, because there's a lot of misconceptions that are out there flowing. So let's try to debunk and dispel some of the myths that are out there.
Sounds good. So some of the things that we hear that are maybe not accurate with PrEP, I get asked a lot, does this pill contain the virus? Like some vaccines, contain the live virus. That's not the case here. So that's not what we're doing. This is not a vaccine. This is a daily pill that works to prevent HIV. So it doesn't contain HIV. It doesn't contain any of the virus. This is not exposing your body to the virus. And I hear that a lot. You know, that idea that maybe it's risky because you're putting HIV into your body, and that's not true. So this medication, it stops the virus from replicating. So if the virus did get into your body, it stops the virus from making copies of itself in the cells, the CD4 cells that it goes after. So that's one of the misconceptions I hear. Another thing I hear a lot is people saying to me, well, this prevents HIV, but it doesn't prevent other STIs like chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis. Surely if everyone takes this, then we'll see a rise in the other STIs. And so far, we've seen no evidence of that. That's not what we're seeing. What happens when somebody decides to go on to PrEP is that we're going to see them for an appointment every 3 months. So they would come in, wherever they're taking PrEP, it doesn't matter, whatever clinic they're going to, we're going to see someone every 3 months. And what we're going to do when we see them is we're going to do an HIV test to make sure they're still HIV negative. We're going to do STI testing. So we're going to test for things like chlamydia, gonorrhea, maybe syphilis. And we're going to talk to them about reducing their risk. And what we want to do is work with somebody on PrEP, if we can, to bring their risk down a little bit. And there might be times where that doesn't work. And an example would be if somebody's in a relationship with somebody who's HIV positive, that's not a situation where we would need to reduce any risk. It is how it is. They're with someone who's HIV positive, and this is perfect to protect them. But in the cases where somebody's on PrEP, and maybe, for example, it's because they're sharing needles, what we're going to do is we're going to work with them to hopefully get them to a place or be ready when they're at a place to link them to treatment for drug addiction, link them certainly to syringe and needle exchange. We're trying to bring their risk down. That's the idea with PrEP. Now, with the 3-monthly HIV and STI testing, so far we've not seen an increase in other STIs. And I think once you see someone every 3 months and you start to engage them in conversation and work with them to try and bring their risk down, we're actually seeing the opposite. We're seeing that people who go on to PrEP are actually making better choices, and we're helping to give them the tools and whatever they need to keep them safer. We think of PrEP as a bridge. So we're taking someone who's high risk or moderate to high risk. Someone doesn't need to be technically very, very high risk, but someone who's at risk for HIV and keeping them on PrEP to a point where they're much lower risk. So that's another thing I hear, the STI rates will go up, and we're not seeing that either. Those are some of the kind of misconceptions that we're hearing with PrEP. Another thing that I hear a lot is that there's this real concern that this is a medication, and if I'm not sick, why do I need to take a medication? There's that risk there. Luckily, with this medication, Truvada, we have very few side effects. It's a very safe medication. So most people who are on PrEP have no side effects at all. They feel absolutely fine. Sometimes in the first month, people get light headaches, but it's very rare that we see that. So I think for a long time, HIV medications have, the idea has always gone along that HIV medications have some awful side effects. And certainly earlier on, talking early 90s, that was the case.
Right.
That's not the case anymore. And this medication for prevention, PrEP, most people have no side effects. It's a very safe medication.
And talk about insurance
Yeah,
insurance
so
covers?
Typically insurance will cover it. Most private insurance will cover PrEP. Medicaid covers PrEP. And also we have funding through the state, so anyone who's uninsured or underinsured, we can get them onto PrEP. Because we really don't want that to be a barrier. We're really trying to reduce barriers as much as possible so that if somebody's at risk for HIV, we can get them onto PrEP and keep them HIV negative. So insurance actually, on the whole, is something that we doesn't get in our way very often. And like I say, with the funding through the state and the pharmaceutical company Gilead that make the medication, they'll give it to people free of charge if they're uninsured, which is helpful. That again breaks down a barrier.
We're coming up towards the end of the show, but I do want to get an opportunity to have you share a little bit about what can we expect happening in the near future. We've got a lot of activities and a lot of attraction going as World AIDS Day is coming and a whole lot more awareness is going out there.
Yeah, so World AIDS Day is December 1st. And hopefully, people will see a lot going on in their communities around HIV. And I would encourage people to take note of what's happening, get involved. HIV is still present in our communities. It truly is. It's everywhere. You don't see it like you used to see it, but it doesn't mean it's not there. So I would encourage people to get involved in events that are happening in the community, help to educate particularly young people about HIV. I would hope people will hear more and more about PrEP. As more studies come out, looking at PrEP and looking at how effective it is, what's wonderful is that the more we find out about PrEP, the better it looks, which is great. So I would hope that people are going to hear more about PrEP and that PrEP's going to become more normal and it's going to become something that you hear about when you go to your primary care doctor. It's going to be something that you hear about your annual checkup. If you go to the emergency department, I would love for people to start to be hearing about PrEP. So that's hopefully where we're going, that PrEP is going to be at the forefront of HIV prevention. People are going to be hearing more about HIV, and we really want to end this epidemic in New York State. We want to be the first state to bring that number of new HIV infections down and end the epidemic.
Well, Nikki Jennings has been our guest here in studio. Thank you so much for coming and sharing with us a little bit about this, because certainly I think this is something that everybody needs to listen to and pay attention to, the HIV and AIDS epidemic, the crisis that's really affecting our community. And hopefully today you got some much needed information that will guide you and direct you. And then also hopefully we broke down some of the stereotypes that's associated with PrEP, because while you hear that word out there, I know that people are still somewhat trying to become familiar with it, but hopefully through this show we've been able to give you the necessary tools so that you can make informed decisions and also raise the awareness in your community. That about wraps it up for this edition of Perspectives. I am Darren Hyman. Of course, we want to thank you for watching. Be sure to stay tuned to Perspectives every week here on BronxNet Television, where we bring you new, exciting information, as well as the news and the current events that make the difference. For all of us on the set of Perspectives, thanks for watching again. Until next time we meet, stay safe.
What's on your mind?
Let 'em know.
What's on your mind? What's on your mind?
Let 'em know. Anything relevant to life, you bring it to the table. Whether you make a move solo or a movement with a stable. No fables, you speak on your decisions. Cause in the long run, it's your voice, your views, your vision. Keeping it real with many messages for you to know. This ain't radio, but DJ runs the show. Entertainment, he rocks it. Politics, he locks it.